Well, hello there, watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the deputy comment editor at the Telegraph, Annabel Denham, and the political editor of the Guardian, Pippa Crerar, with us from now until just before midnight. Welcome to both of you. So let's check out some of those front pages, shall we? Starting with The Sun, which leads with the allegation made against a BBC presenter. Their headline: from the father of the young person, deeming the BBC liars. The Guardian also focusing on the BBC story, quoting the statement from the lawyer of the young person, calling the claims rubbish. And The Eye does the same. BBC presenter did nothing wrong, claims the young person at the centre of the sex photo scandal. Well, let's go straight to our guests on this then. Lots more papers coming in for us as well. Pippa, the story still dominating a number of newspapers, certainly. Bring us what your thoughts are, first of all, on The Sun, which is doubling down effectively on their story.
Yes, that's right. I mean, this is a story which has dominated headlines, not just today, but over the last few days since The Sun broke this story, these allegations about a BBC presenter at the weekend. And effectively what The Sun's doing is doubling down. It's a very bold front page. They say that the BBC are liars. They are accusing the BBC of ignoring warnings from the young person's family back in May, 7 weeks ago. They claimed that they approached the BBC and had a conversation with them, and that no action was taken, and that this presenter remained on air. They said that they had screenshots of contact between the presenter and their child, who is now 20, and they have obviously reacted to events, ongoing events. The Metropolitan Police said today, of course, that it's still considering whether to launch an investigation into these allegations, and it's really up the ante. Like I say, it's a very bold front page, and I imagine that there's probably some nerves in the Sun newsroom tonight, having made the decision to double down on the original story. And they've spoken again, I think it's the stepfather of the young person, who is saying that they stick by their original tale, and that they are acting only to protect their child, who allegedly was using this money to fund a drug habit. So, you know, it looks like a bit of a mess, really, and different sides in this story are saying different things. Obviously, it's legally very, very tricky. But inevitably, intrigue follows, and the drama of today means that more and more people will be paying attention to this story. So I think we can only hope that it's resolved one way or another very soon.
Yes, Annabel, over the weekend, we were reminded that this is complex. Certainly that is proving to be the case. Weirdly, we have he says, she says, within a family, it appears, who knows? And effectively, the BBC and the Sun slightly pitted against each other here now.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Quite extraordinary to have the Sun newspaper going up against the public service broadcaster. It's been an absolutely extraordinary day. We began really with further speculation, particularly on social media, about who the individual in question might be, who the BBC high-profile, prominent presenter might be. And we thought that we were rounding off the day with this bombshell letter from a lawyer representing the young person at the centre of this story. The lawyer claiming that mistakes have been made, that this is, and I quote, totally wrong. And we thought perhaps that might be the end of it, at least for this Monday. But no, the Sun have come out very robustly in response to these accusations. As Pippa says, the family have said that they were coming out to help the vulnerable child, saying that they had made this complaint to BBC, didn't feel as though it was being given due attention. They put these allegations to them for an hour. It's just quite an extraordinary story. And I think, as Pippa says, unfortunately, there is that intrigue with it. For perhaps a while, it remained within some kind of media bubble, but it's very much broken out of that. A lot of people are laying claim to knowing who the individual in question is, and I suspect these are wholly unverified. And I think that this is just going to continue. I think the pressure and intensity of that pressure is going to mount and mount, and who knows where it's going to end.
And if we take a look at the Daily Mail, Pippa, they suggest in a Mail Snap poll that 1 in 6 people know who the scandal-hit BBC star is. Millions, they say, can name the BBC star embroiled in this teenage sex photo claims. And the difficulty, of course, is all of those innocent BBC presenters who've been swept up in this, I suppose.
Yes, and we've had a variety of big names from the BBC coming out on social media in the last few days, making it clear that it's not them, which has just led to yet more speculation as to who the individual might be. And it's interesting to think about why the media hasn't named the individual, because there's not an injunction in place or anything like that. But there's obviously concerns about both defamation and breaching privacy. And if you think back to 2018, Cliff Richard obviously won a case over the BBC's coverage of his home being raided after falsely being accused of historic sex offences. And then the Supreme Court last year ruled that a person investigated for a crime has a reasonable expectation of privacy. So these are all the calculations that media lawyers are weighing up. And of course, that applies to social media as well. People tweeting speculation open themselves up to risk of defamation and libel. So understandably, media organisations are being very cautious. And I actually noted there was a second story in The Sun tonight, which was speculating that some MPs were considering naming the individual in the House of Commons. Obviously, MPs have privilege, which effectively protects them from libel laws. And if they make an announcement in the chamber of the House of Commons, and it's not this wouldn't be a first. I don't know whether it's going to happen or not, but you'll cast your mind back to 2011 when John Hemming, the Lib Dem MP, outed Ryan Giggs during a debate on privacy orders after he took out an injunction over an affair with a TV reality star. So there is some precedent there, although I suspect, given today's events and given the sort of conflicting set accounts that we're hearing from the young person's lawyer on their behalf on the one hand, and the young person's parents through The Sun on the other, you'd think that any MP considering doing this would be weighing it up very, very carefully before they get involved in the whole debate.
Yes, and the Daily Mail says that BBC chiefs are facing a near revolt from mutinous fellow stars who are said to have put massive pressure on their colleague to identify himself after internet trolls falsely accused others of being the man. That's picked up by the Eye as well, suggesting that the BBC unnamed star came under pressure from within the corporation to allow himself to be named. But there's pressure too, Annabel, on the effectively judge-shaped privacy laws we have in this country after that Sir Cliff Richard case that Pippa mentioned. That in the early stages of an investigation, someone has the right to privacy, to anonymity, which is where we're at now.
I think it's right that we've been treading immensely careful with this. As you say, prominent presenters, Gary Lineker, Jeremy Vine, Nikki Campbell, among them, have issued statements distancing themselves from this. Nikki Campbell actually potentially taking it a step further, very affected by what he has seen on social media, on Twitter in particular. And it's, of course, it's extremely sensitive. It's extremely problematic for our public service broadcaster. It's not just the internal comms, so that has clearly been immensely challenging and problematic, not least stars perhaps feeling as though they weren't duly protected by the corporation, but externally as well. It seems as though the reporting has been the BBC reporting on itself, fully aware that it is finding itself at the centre of the story. It is becoming the story, not knowing necessarily what it is reporting on, and really just adding to this complete fog around this story, complete confusion over, what we know and what we don't know. And it's increasingly looking like we don't know a lot more than we do.
Yes, and that's picked up actually by, this is the Scottish edition of the Metro. Nikki Campbell, the Radio 5 Live presenter who talked today about what a difficult weekend it had been, my pain at false BBC web claims. presumably quoting from his radio show earlier today. There's confusion too about the legality of this. Now, we don't know how substantiated any of the allegations are. We've heard from the young person at the centre of the BBC scandal saying the claims are rubbish, which is what The Guardian's picked up on your paper by your media editor, Jim Waterson, who's written lots about this already this weekend, I know. The young person at the centre of a scandal over a BBC presenter reportedly paying for explicit pictures, issued a statement claiming the key allegations were rubbish. The point I was going to make, though, is that legally, confusion about whether any criminal activity has happened here on the original claims. The law on indecent images treats all under 18s as children, Pippa, unlike if you had met somebody in person, for example. So there is confusion on the law about this as well.
Yeah, and I think this is why the Met has not yet decided to launch a formal investigation, because they don't believe that the threshold for a criminal investigation has been reached. But they issued a statement earlier today in which they said that they would, however, carry out further work, but it would fall short of the formal status of criminal investigation, which would give them officers the powers of arrest and search, for example. But detectives are apparently trying to work out what, if any, criminal offence may have been committed by the suspended presenter. As you rightly say, Anna, there is the suggestion that any young person, if the young person sent any explicit pictures when they were 17, that would count as images of child sexual abuse, which is obviously a very serious criminal offence. But if the explicit photos were exchanged after the young person turned 18, then it's possible, and bearing in mind they're now 20, that it's possible that no law was broken. And obviously the age at which individuals can share explicit photos is higher at the age in which they can illegally have sex. So the legalities of this are quite complicated, and the police are obviously treading very carefully while they assess the information that they've already got. The Sun has said that they have seen evidence that supports the parents' concerns, but we don't, I think, know really what that is beyond a suggestion that they may have seen bank statements with transfers of money and possibly screenshots of exchanged messages between the pair. And I think there was one reference to the mother seeing the presenter on a video call. But beyond that, it's very difficult to know how much evidence the Sun has. One imagines that their threshold for publication legally would be pretty high, but we've not seen that ourselves, of course. So it's difficult to say. And as we say, the police haven't launched an investigation yet. So they are still looking at it, but obviously haven't made their minds up. So I think from the BBC perspective, though, the one thing just to add is that Tim Davie is going to be addressing staff tomorrow. I think that not about this, but he is due to answer questions as he meets journalists to launch the corporation's annual report, and he'll have the corporation's interim chair with him there as well, Dame Ellen Closs-Stevens. It's her first public appearance in the role since she took over after the Richard Sharp scandal. He obviously had to stand down over perceived conflicts of interest rows. So, the BBC has had a pretty turbulent few months itself, particularly amongst senior leadership. And while the Prime Minister and the Culture Secretary say that they have faith in Tim Davie, the Director General, at the moment, it's going to be interesting to see whether that stands firm in the coming days.